weeks. I'm looking at the election that happened last week, and since then we've had the parks blow up with Jonathan Dickinson Park and nine state parks around the state. Our governor has not said a word, has not said a peep, has not come out of it. Almost seems like hiding at the moment, which really frustrates me personally. This is the most asinine, oops, idea I've ever heard of. I'm okay, good, because I never swear on air, but this one, absolutely ridiculous. And thank you, residents. We've had so many people step up, elected officials and residents, that are really covering the issue. So I don't have to, but I just want to say I'm with y'all, and I'm proud of Martin County residents for speaking up. And of course, we have the Brightline issue that's been going on as well. So, new City of Stewart Commission, and they voted 5-0 to rescind the Brightline interlocal agreement with the county. They need to actually revisit that on the next meeting, which is September 9th, to officially vote on that. So, just amazing all the things that are going on. So, I want to thank my sponsors. Indiantown Marine Center strives to provide their customers with an efficient and user-friendly location for servicing and storing their vessels while still maintaining cleanliness and environmental quality and safety. They provide dockage, travel lifts, workspace, long-term storage space, and other repair and maintenance services, as well as offering a convenient hurricane haul-out program. Indiantown Marine Center is a contractor yard and can provide a list of approved contractors that customers can engage with no markup or gate fees. Customers are also welcome to bring your own contractor, provided that pre-approval is given before starting work. You can give the good folks at Indiantown Marine Center a call at 772 597 0800, 772 597 0800, and they can take about any size boat you have. Also out in wonderful Indiantown. Attention boaters, if you're looking for a safe harbor during hurricane season, we're in the midst of it. Top-notch boatyard to keep your vessel in tip-top shape. It's no further than Indiantown Marina. Indiantown Marina is not just your average boat storage facility nestled in South Florida along the Okeechobee Waterway. They're a well-protected hurricane hole that savvy cruisers love to call home. They offer a full array of boatyard services or do-it-yourself. Reserve your space today, folks. We're in the middle of hurricane season. Don't count on a hurricane not popping up. We know those babies can just blow up out of nowhere, it seems like, even towards the end of season, which ends the end of November. Reserve your space today. Make sure you have safe harborage at Indiantown Marina, 772 597 2457. Between those two marinas, if you have a boat, you need something done, storage, painting, work, I don't care what it is, they can do it. So Indiantown's fantastic. And also, don't forget about Susie Nash. She is on tour right now. She is on fire. Folks, she's one of the top Spotify new follows and listeners with her music, and it has been fantastic. Susie Nash, we can't wait till you're back in town and up in Archie's up there in Fort Pierce, and hearing you belt it out on the weekends. So, folks, that's the wonderful sponsors I have. And in the studio, it's been a little while because it's been an election season. I want to thank Mark Breckbill. He offered his hour for almost the entire election season since candidates qualified in June to last Tuesday. So we could really hear from all the candidates, and boy, was that greatly appreciated. But in the studio, we all know it's Eric Miller. Eric Miller served 10 years as a Martin County Republican Party Precinct Committeeman. During that term, he was elected countywide twice as the Republican State Committeeman of Martin County. While serving 2 terms on the Republican Party of Florida, or the RPOF, he was elected to and served as Vice Chairman of CD18, which is now our CD21 caucus, Chairman of the RPOF Technology Committee, and Chairman of the RPOF Platform Committee. He also ran against Charlie Crist, handpicked chairman of the RPOF, Jim Greer, who ended up in prison for several party-related crimes and violations. While serving, Eric's efforts assisted in exposing corruption within the RPOF. While serving locally, Eric participated in Operation Iron Claw. Iron Claw was a write-in candidate designed to bring opposition and awareness to the constitutional offices in Martin County. Eric also served as National Treasurer of the Republican Liberty Caucus. He has worked at national, state, and local levels with leadership roles in Republican campaigns. Among them are Deputy Florida Communications Director of the Treasure Coast and Palm Beaches for the campaign to elect Duncan Hunter, and Martin County Chairman for Herman Cain for presidential campaign, as well as many other local campaigns. Locally, Eric has served as vice chairman of the Department of Juvenile Justice Council of Martin County. He was president for 8 years of Mothers Against Drunk Driving of Martin and St. Lucie counties. He also participated in the Children's Service Council on behalf of MAD. He served on the Palm Beach County School District Technology Advisory Committee and was a steering committee member for Shared Services Network in Martin County. Eric has received the Jupiter Tequesta Chamber of Commerce Businessman of the Year Award, as well as 2 Volunteer of the Year Awards from the Martin County Boys and Girls Clubs, East Stewart and Indiantown, respectively. Eric established the first technology center in Indiantown for the Boys and Girls Club. He and his wife founded Computers for Kids and were able, through philanthropic effort, to get over 125 computers, printers, and internet accounts to the underprivileged children in Martin County. Eric and his wife Cindy founded On-Site Computer Centers and sold the company as well as their cloud computing company in 2010. Since then, Eric has built a self-sustainable 5-acre homestead in Indiantown that we've talked about off and on over the years on the show. And finally, Eric has a degree in computer science, and having served in the United States Army Airborne Infantry, Eric now serves as commander of the Indiantown Veterans Association. Eric's political and life musings can be found at nomoremrniceguy.com. Eric, welcome back, and thank you. It's wonderful to hear about your background. I didn't realize everything myself, and what a fantastic array and variety of just life's experiences that you bring to you, and especially political things.
And locally.
And
locally.
and
So
locally.
The next time somebody asks me, why should I listen to you or why should I care what you have to say, I'm going to play back your intro there. It made me tired just thinking about all the stuff that I've done in the past. But it's been great. I love Martin County. I love the people in Martin County. And boy, I have to tell you, we had what I would consider to be people will disagree with me, but I consider it to be a very poor voter turnout,
Yes.
where we only had 27, roughly 28% of the eligible people in this county turn out to vote, and beyond that, and I'm sure we can get into it. We look at the constitutional offices. No one had any contender for them. We had one constitutional office that raised $300,000 plus in a campaign account and had no one running against him. So, I mean, there's issues we need to talk about, and I think there's some ways that we can solve some of these problems that we deal with in our frustrations on a day in and day out basis.
These are going to be wonderful topics to talk about, and folks, please join the conversation. I'm watching for your comments on Facebook Live, as well as you can call in 220-9788. 220-WSTU. If you have a question, comment, join the conversation on this election year. You brought up the constitutional offices, Eric, and I do want to shout out the one that you brought up with $300,000. That was actually Deputy John Chief Budenseek. And I have to say, I'm also going to shout out on that one, Eric, because that was an open seat. Sheriff Snyder retired, and usually open seats are heavily contested. Mm-hmm. But honestly, Deputy Chief Budenseek was in the studio here. He was just so qualified. Literally,
I'm not
everybody.
disagreeing with
You're not. I'm
qualifications
shouting it out
None
on
of
these
it,
on
yeah.
that particular one. He was so qualified that everybody else said, you should be the guy. We can't even bring more to the table than you are. So there's something to be said for that.
There's something to be said for it.
Now, the other constitutional offices, and folks, let's step back. The constitutional offices. It's our supervisor of elections. It's the tax collector. It's the property appraiser. It's the clerk of court and the sheriff. That's our constitutional offices.
Right.
So those rarely get contested once there's an incumbent, and if they are contested, I don't know if the incumbent has ever been defeated in Martin County.
And that lends to, in of itself, let's remove names, let's remove faces, let's remove everything from it, and let's look generally at what that actually begins to breed. And when you don't have people that want to go up against the machine or the incumbent, you begin to breed your own machine that produces its own next in the hierarchy, and it becomes an inbred sort of political system that you're just expected to rise to the next level. And it surprised me when I ran for state committeeman against the Charlie Stracuzzi, who was the treasurer then at this time. He was supposed to have the mantle handed off to him, and he was even astounded that someone was going to run against him. I came into politics with a red, white, and blue banner flying all over me, with very altruistic uh, desires and hopes and goals and thoughts of what a Republican Party was supposed to be and what this democratic, if you will, process in our republic was supposed to take place as, and it's anything but that.
Well, Eric,
Anything but that.
I couldn't agree with you more. I know some of the candidates. I get to know all of them as they come through the studio. Some of the people are very good friends of mine. But with that being said, it's good to have competition. It's good to have somebody else. I'm sorry, it just is. It brings issues out. It encourages conversation. It may bring up issues that are out there in the public. And let's tie in our local races here in Martin County with what you're saying with the constitutional races. There has not been any recently, and rarely over the years, over the last, let's say, 15, 20 years, Democrats. You know, granted, the majority of people are registered Republican in Martin County, but we have nobody even stepping up to the plate as a Democrat.
Well, that's registration.
Before we go any further, folks, I want to break in just to clarify some figures that you will be hearing here shortly. After the interview, I heard from Commissioner-elect Blake Capps, and I will just read his statement verbatim for you. Dear Casey, I listened to a portion of your interview with Eric Miller today and was disappointed about how misinformed he was about my campaign, specifically his false inference that Jupiter Island exerted undue influence on it. I had 192 contributions totaling $81,190, with 6 contributions from Jupiter Island totaling $3,700. Also, I heard Mr. Miller complaining about the power of special interest in Martin County politics, such as the Firefighters, Police Benevolent Association, CPAC Realtors, Treasure Coast Marine Association, etc. Please remind him that I was the candidate who won without the support of any of these special interests. Sincerely, J. Blake Capps, Commissioner-elect for Martin County Commission. Mr. Capps, thank you so much. I always appreciate anybody that's listening to the show, and always will take a correction of facts, because facts are what matter now and in the future. Thank you much, and now we will continue with the show.
And you don't have a Republican Party that acts like a Republican Party, and that's how you ended up with a Czech Parent Republic, Country Club Republican, that was funded by Jupiter Island, and the largest globalist factions of the world sit in Jupiter Island right now, and they funded and got behind Mr. Blake Capps, and now you have yourselves to thank for that election in of itself, a weak party. And that's demonstrated in the fact that when you look at the closed campaign for Doug and for Ms. Vargas, we can talk about the dynamics in that one, but it shows you that there were 20,000 Republicans that actually came out and voted in that election for them.
Correct.
That left a large number of others, Democrats and others, that voted in the other elections, and that's where you got someone that is very progressive, a rhino, a Czech Pant Republican that was not a conservative like Blake Capps, that got into office, because now you had all of these Democrats and other independents that moved in that direction. And there's reasons for that.
We're going to go into these races, and just so people understand, there's a total of 114,596 people registered to vote in Martin County. Some of the Democrats and others did convert to Republican so that they could vote in that District 1 race, which was closed. But as of today, there are 61,110 registered Republicans, Democrats 24,957, others, a category that is growing across the state, and that is 28,529 registered. So Democrat and other together, while still less than Republican, are much closer. If you add those two together.
Yet we only had 31,708 people turn out to vote. And out of those, see, this is where your local party will say, oh, we're a great party, we did great. We got 64% of that election were Republicans. Well, yeah, but only 32% of the Republicans came out to vote. Where was the They never try in the primaries. And that's part of what happens. Your local party says it's easier to, and I'll tell you, when I was running against not Jim Greer, but the second time I ran, Carlos Lopez Canteras. He was the sitting lieutenant governor at that time, and he wanted to know why I wanted to run for chairman. And I said, because I think we need to build the grassroots, we need to build the party. And he says to me, he says, don't you realize it's much easier to control a small number of people than it is a large? Why do you want to grow the party? So the party considers it a success when it's in the majority and it gets somebody with an R next to its name elected, and you don't have a lot of true Republican, conservative minded people that are really within the party itself.
And folks, while what he said is true, it's much easier to control a small group. Doesn't that frighten the dickens out of you? And it should. This is not what America was founded on, and we really want all representation. And by the way, Penny Prelli, good morning. Amy Pritchett, school board member, good morning. Appreciate y'all tuning in. Eric, there's a lot to be said with a lot of these races and how our local, and I know we've talked about this a lot off the air, how frankly St. Lucie County is kind of going through the same thing with their Republican executive committee. It's much easier for them to control a small amount of people, and so maybe that's part of they appreciate a small turnout. I don't know.
They do, but you have to remember that those people that are running that party that know just how many Republicans they have to get turned out also know the types of Republicans that need to get turned out to turn out for those types of candidates that are in that machine that's building all of these you're next, you're next, you're next hierarchies to step from a state legislator to a state senator into a congressional position. There's a hierarchy or a chain that grows through this, and the machine coddles and grows and grooms and helps and does what it can. And obvious, it does not push to get Republicans out during a primary. There was only 32% Republican turnout.
Willie Weed, good morning. Thank you for tuning in. Eric, you're absolutely right. It's they push out name recognition. They are able to get behind a candidate, and if you're not in that machine, if you're not part of the clique, it's kind of like high school, folks. It really is. It's kind of a clique. If you're not part of the clique, it is one heck of a uphill battle. It truly is.
It would be nice if the machine itself actually had some principle behind it. Do you realize that the Republican Party of Florida does not have a platform? That the local party no longer has a platform. I worked for years to try to get them to even get one. We put one in, and it became abandoned. They stand for whatever an R is supposed to be at the time. Whatever the D's are for, they're against, and it's an adult game of cocktails and who can write the biggest checks and get the biggest pats on the back and hopefully have the most influence. It has nothing to do with anything other than that.
Let's talk about some of the local races. Honestly, I think that you and I are going to differ a little bit on our insight on the races, and
Sure.
that's what makes it fun, though. So, and let's start out with Indiantown. Your beloved Indiantown. We had basically, folks, with the exception of one race, which is the Martin County Commission race, District 5, all the incumbents were voted out, including in Indiantown. So tell us real quick what that Phyllis Waters was voted in.
Amen. Phyllis and I know, don't see eye to eye on everything that there is to see eye and eye on, but Phyllis is an adult. Phyllis understands her role. She understands the role of a government, and she also excuse me, understands when taking a seat how you can personally abuse that for different reasons. And when you are running a campaign like Janet Hernandez was, hoping that the majority of the Latinos who are a large majority registered bloc, didn't turn out, would turn out to vote for her simply because, as she says, of her long black hair. And that's Miss Waters doesn't bring that to the table. She comes to the table with ideas. She comes to the table with the ability to listen to people, and I think she's going to bring some adult leadership that's much needed.
And Indiantown had a tremendously low turnout. It was under 1,000 people, if I remember. I'm trying to look at the exact figure.
It usually is.
It was a few hundred for each. It was incredible. Another race here, City of Stewart. This one, two incumbents. And I will say Troy McDonald and Becky Bruner. Thank you both for your service. I'm going to say that. This election, folks, to me was about people wanted their voices heard. They're tired of going to their elected officials, and I feel like the elected officials are in this little bubble with all city staff, and they have a bubble of people, of supporters around them, and somehow they lose sight of what the rest of the people think. And I think that was a referendum this year that our voices are not being heard. We're done. We're booting out the incumbents. And by the way, the one incumbent that survived it was because it was a three-way race. He did not take the majority of the votes. He took over 40%. So very interesting. Doug Smith, I want to talk about city, but Doug Smith, he was going for his 7th term. He's been in office for 24 years. I looked at the history of elections in Martin County. He has the record for holding a county commission seat the longest of anybody. There's been some 20 years, but he was 24 years. Something has to be said for that, but he was just voted out, and it wasn't even close.
Be careful what you wish for. You may get it. Now it just frees him up to go after higher aspirations politically, because Doug is not the sort that is going to sit and not look at himself and not be in the spotlight. That Doug is one of those people that's a consummate politician, and I'm sure he's maybe take the next couple of years to start preparing for his next higher step.
Well, that'll be interesting, folks. What do you think about that? I mean, I'm thinking, let's say Brian Mast gets a seat with or something in the cabinet with President Trump, which is bantied around out there. But I also know that Sheriff Snyder has already said, put his hat in that ring and said, that's the one thing I haven't done that I would like to yet. So, a Snyder Smith, I think Snyder's a name in this county that's pretty tough to overcome. So he may run for anything. It's not a guarantee, I guess is what I'm saying. You never know who else is going to run for those offices. And I got sidetracked off the city races. So,
but again, we're back to having these dynasties, and that's what happens when you don't allow or you weed out the grassroots competition. I remember when Jonathan Milton, who was a reserve deputy, ran against Bob Crowder one year, and John academically and I think intellectually probably had Crowder hands down as a candidate. He would have made a better administrative sheriff than did Crowder, but he at least challenged him and created a campaign to where the candidates had to stand in front of you and talk. They had to tell you what their thoughts on things were, what their policies were. Don't just hand us someone and expect us to take it. I mean,
the Republican parties do that a lot, and you're speaking of the RPOF. They get behind a candidate, and they don't even want to. It doesn't seem like they encourage any new ideas or new candidates. They have this person that they have a relationship with, so they stay with that one person, and it's not necessarily to the benefit of the entire county, to the entire population. And you just touched on something I wanted to bring up, and that was, you talked about he was a better administrative sheriff. He had great ideas. This year, the incumbents did not want to participate in forums. I think it's a terrible, terrible shame. It disenfranchises voters to not get to know their candidates. Mm-hmm. There was one particular forum that I moderated. It was called We Care Martin. And this was an interesting forum, folks, because everybody was invited from the city and county commissions. Every incumbent declined. And honestly, and a couple of the challengers declined as well, or were not able to make it. Every candidate that showed up at that forum won that race, with the exception of District 5, which was Michael Circus, Bruce Nathan, and Ed Campy. Ed Campy didn't show up. Bruce Nathan, Michael Circus did, and the two of them took the majority of the votes. I was there that night. That room was full with over 200 people, besides it being live streamed. 60% of our voters are over 50. This room was, trust me, everybody was over 50. And if there was somebody in there that slipped through, I'm sorry, but it was generally everybody was retired. The people were ticked off. They said, have they forgotten who they work for? Have they forgotten who they represent? The questions I read that night were not formulated by anybody but the people, the residents of the county. They were upset. They walked out that night. I can't tell you how many people said, I'm going to make sure I'm not voting with them. I'm going to tell my neighbors not to vote with them, because they didn't care enough to show up here tonight. And I think somehow our elected officials, it's that bubble they're in, I think. They might have had some issues or something, whoever was promoting the whole forum. The city manager went and researched the forum and put a letter out to all the candidates and said, I don't know if this is, I don't see them registered in the state because I don't know why they're not registered. It's a group of citizens. I don't think they knew that they should do a fictitious name. It's a $50 registration. It was a real shame because there were no other forums like this presented. The chamber tried to do one. The incumbents didn't want to participate, so it was canceled. So I'm getting on my soapbox here, but gosh darn it. I think that's what this election was about. The people have been forgotten. And
Well, yeah, I agree with you. I think there was I won't call it a Le Pen moment, but there was a wave that did sweep over, and that rang real true in the city of Stewart. You can see how it worked out in our commission races
and the county.
Yeah, in the county commission races. The I'm not quite sure where I was going with that real quick. I got sidetracked in my own mind. I had two thoughts come together at the same time.
Keep
and
thinking
they
about it.
collided,
We got a
but-
couple comments. Amy Pritchett, we care Martin is legit. Yes, it is. It's just a group of citizens that have gotten together and they've put their interest for Martin County. It's actually, they have a huge email list. It really is a very large organization. They just didn't have a fictitious name registration. Willie Weed, what about term limits for the city and county seats? City already has term limits, Willie. The county, we're hopefully we're going to see that happen. I know that, everybody that was running against the incumbents were supportive of it. And, it's not there yet. And they're talking about it at state. It's been through the legislation. It's been
There's two things
not
I'd
passed.
like to see happen, and this is part of the solutions portion of this whole thing. And when we come back, I remember what I was going to say to you about this
Good.
incumbency
Okay.
wave being voted out, because it played out, and you saw it play out in Susan Gibbs' election out there, just because of her ties back to.
I have an opinion
to
on
Doug.
Susan Gibbs
But
Thomas,
yeah,
too. I'll give
I've
it.
got a couple of them on it too,
Yep.
and it's just anyway. But the term limits can be done. We can do that locally. It would take a voter referendum, and there are some technicalities on it, but it can be done. You also, I hope we can start to find more people that are willing to look at how we actually elect our county commissioners, and instead of having 5 county commissioners like we do, where I can vote for somebody in Jensen Beach and I live in Indiantown, which is complete insanity. We have 5. Each one is elected from their own district, so only the people in District 1 would elect District 1. And then there's 2 more commissioners that would be elected by everybody countywide. So we'd have 7 commissioners total instead of 5. And I think between the term limits and looking at these changes that we can make, it moves the control closer to the people. In your district. So only the people in your district are voting for that commissioner. That commissioner then has to represent their district in the communications that are taking place. You guys are growing way too much over there. No, you can't have our buffer. No, you're not going to annex over here. My district does not want that. But now you have to, when you're a commissioner, appease the people in Jensen Beach when you're in Indiantown. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. But when you get back to and anyway, it can't. By changing these things, we can change the dynamics, and we, the people, can actually take control back of the system. Now, if we're only going to have a small number of people turn out, let's get the right people to turn out. Not people that are standing on bridges and waving flags, but people that are working in the background to help begin grooming our next leaders that are going to be representatives of the people. Start pointing out what's going on in the government and how, when you get in a government role like that, and I've said this to more than one elected official, be careful the machine. It will consume you. You will become part of it. It is designed to make you think that you are part of it.
Well, I was going to say the Republican Party, they think they're doing just that, though, Eric.
They're not. There is no candidate grooming. What you have are insider deals and country club meetings that take place behind closed gates that have nothing to do with voters. It has nothing to do with the grassroots. The grassroots are an excuse. They're an excuse for existence for the Republican Party, both at a state level and at a local level. And yeah, I know we've got 1 million plus voter registration over the Democrats in Florida. You're doing great, Republican Party. You're getting so many people registered. But you know what? It's not working when you have people that run inside novelty gift businesses for every cycle of electioneers that come through, and state it's a machine that's just gone awry.
Couple comments here. Gary Erler, transparency is key. You are 1,000% right. We're seeing that with Brightline. As information is now being revealed. I've spent, as you all know, the last week and a half trying to share information that has not been revealed to the public. Tommy Lloyd, thank you for tuning in. Casey, you are very kind to give the outgoing commissioners the benefit of the doubt for being in a bubble, but my personal experience is that they were deliberate in their ignorance to the public opinions and even our experts when presented. They need to go for our best interest. Tommy, you're right too. Absolutely. I can't disagree with you. That's where they're not listening to the general public.
They're listening to the machine, Tommy.
They're listening
That's
to the
just
machine.
it. There's a book out there that was written called The Administrator. What is it? It was one of Woodrow Wilson's favorite books, and I'll get you the link to it, Casey. You can post it on your show links when you do this. But it talks about the administrative state, where, like we were talking about before, the thing runs itself. It absolutely runs itself, and 90+% of what is brought to these commissioners to vote on doesn't come from them. It comes from things that are happening within this machine at a county level. Requirements for grants, requirements for this, offsets for that. We have to do this now because the machine has said that our rules say that we have to do this, and the state says. The commissioners don't do anything but rubber stamp 95% of what comes in front of them. And show me the last clear thought one of them had with a mandate that was their own, other than shutting down a pet store or telling you that you had to wear a mask. How do the voters put somebody back in that mandated to them, like some elitist snob, that they had to wear a mask all of the time? Ed Campy acted like he was in control of everything. We will lock you down. You're locked. I don't care. I'm going to burn on your mask and your mask. You know, you would have thought people would have remembered. But here again, we get fired up over politics, and we're in the 1%. We're less than 1% of the
Yes.
people that really care. But it was less than 1% of the people that actually took on the British. And if the 1% actually get together with some money behind them, a legitimate plan, and know how to use the system to their own benefit to derive good. Okay, and I know that's all subject. What's good for you is not good for me, and blah, 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 blah. Well, my tolerance level is done. I'm done with tolerance. Yeah. It's time to play with my set of principles and your set of principles the same way the other side has been playing with theirs. And theirs have been stepping all over me and mine. I want my money back. I want my voice back, and the way we take it back is with our individual votes, one at a time.
Two things. An example of that, you just talked about kind of the machine and the issues that are happening behind the scenes that the county commissioners get presented with. Let's take 750, folks. That's transit-oriented development. It's alive and well today. It's just not called 750 anymore. It's why Brightline wants a fourth parcel that the county commission had on an agenda to discuss, but then it was pulled, to give to them. Transit-oriented development is development so you don't have to drive your car anymore. You live, you work, you play right there, and you can hop on the good old choo-choo, and that's how you get around and ride your bicycle.
So you know where that came from?
750.
You know where that came from?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, from Mr. Neil Pierce, from Agenda 21, from
Thank
the
you.
Rio
Agenda 21,
Conference,
yes.
and now it's Agenda 2030.
The name was escaping
and
me, but
now
yes.
it's in the World Economic Forum, and they just keep calling it everything and anything, and they keep telling you what they're going to do. And actually, Martin County was we begged to have us involved to be the first sustainable community in Florida. We were number uno, and we started rolling out. That's why you see all of these bike paths that are painted green, is because you took all of these wacko grants to do some kind of a freaked out project.
Grants have strings, every one of them.
Every one of them, and now you're implementing the strings of Agenda 21. And your livable cities, and your 15-minute cities, and your walkable cities.
But we don't call it Agenda 21 or 750 anymore because those terms were rooted out, and they're bad terms. So now it's just...
Reset.
Yep, it is. Well, you're right.
But it's real. It's real. It does embed itself in our system, and it's there. And you know what? God bless them. They brought it to Indiantown. I have nothing against Miss Krista. She is excellent at what she does, but I always bring her as an example of the New World Order's perfect governmental administrator. She is a county or a village administrator. She is administrating the machine, and people like her know these things. They're bureaucratic in nature.
They do. They go to
who she
conferences.
is,
It's
and
what they
God bless her.
learn.
She's a true professional
She is.
at what she does, but her profession is what I have a problem with, not with Taryn. And it's the profession of administering this bureaucratic machine that's designed to keep you down. You can't do anything without asking the government's permission anymore, locally even.
Let's
And
talk.
that's part of the problem they're having and growing in Indiantown right now with their Swamp Fest as well. People are upset. They want to have a festival that they've been having for years in Indiantown, and all of a sudden, well, they got what they wished for. They have a village, so now they have rules about these things and people watching them where they weren't watching them before, and now they have to abide by rules and they don't like it.
This is a growing bureaucratic governor, and it is. It's or government, and there's so many government jobs out there. It's absolutely astounding anymore.
It is.
Pretty soon, I don't know who's going to pay the salaries of all the government officials because we're becoming a completely, employment.
Here's
employed
one
government.
for you, Casey. Let's see between you and I and the contacts we have if we can get either out of the school board, the city of Stewart, sheriff's department, fire department, or the county commission a complete org chart. I don't want to see heads of departments and end your org chart. And if you don't show me names, I don't need to know who's employed as a janitor, but show it as an open,
A job
funded
position.
job with a description, and show me how many layers of jobs there actually are that are being paid by Martin County taxpayers. And I think it would be an eye-opener.
That's
to
a great
lot
idea.
Of people.
I would
But
love that.
Try and get it.
Yeah,
I've
that's not
asked
out
for
there.
decades to try and find something like that, and nobody can do it. Nobody will do it.
Let's talk about the Susan Gibbs Thomas, Blake Capps,
Yeah.
and Frank Diamba race real
Yeah.
quick. Eric, that one, I definitely have an opinion on that, and I'm going to say what it is. First of all, these PACs are ridiculous. We need to get rid of PACs. They are the ones that are controlling races, and there is no oversight on what narrative they put out. But with Susan Gibbs Thomas, Eric, I didn't recognize the campaign to the candidate. Loved Susan Gibbs Thomas. The message it put out, I didn't recognize it. It didn't, to me, it wasn't Susan Gibbs Thomas. Somebody else was running her campaign and messaging it. They aligned her strongly with Doug Smith, who has more anti sentiment than I have ever seen. And they aligned her campaign with him. They were waving signs together. They had fundraisers together. Their signs were put in the ground together.
There's a lot to dissect there, and I agree with you on that, on the majority of what you said. To contrast this, we need to look at the Vargas and Smith race to begin with. There were let's call it 20,000 votes in that race, and then when you look at Susan's race, there were 28, almost 29,000 votes. So
'Cause
there's
it
a
was
difference
open.
of 9,000 votes there. So it tells me that because there were at least 20,000 Republicans that voted in this primary. And there were another 10,000, either Democrat or others.
Correct.
And those actually went, I believe, more towards Blake Capps, who is more of a liberal, kind of rhino, globalist, check pant republic kind of candidate.
But I don't know if people saw him that way. You do, but I don't know if the general voting population saw him that way.
I think he took a good trend of the independent and the Democrats. I
He-
really
he
do.
probably-
Yeah,
oh, yeah,
I think
he probably did.
I
He
think
probably
that's
did.
that. If this had been a closed election, it would have been much closer, and Frank would have been the spoiler in between, probably again for Blake. Frank and Susan were both very conservative
Even with the Doug
candidates.
Smith anti-sentiment, because honestly, Susan's race was tied with his. It was like the same pack was supporting
and that's
them.
what I wanted
the
to talk to you
same
about.
postcards.
I know for a fact, and that some of those endorsements that came out were not accepted endorsements, shall we say? They were just, we want her to win. We're going to spend money. We're going to put money out to promote her. Let's endorse her.
That's what, and it's the PACs.
And it's like it shows up in the candidate's mailbox, and you're going, "Who is this?"
Right.
Okay, so that can work two ways. It can tie you one way, or it can tie you another way when it's not really your campaign that's controlling it, and it's outside money influencing it. I'll tell you, and it's the first time that I think anybody that's savvy enough that's watched the political races here in Martin County will say that a candidate has won the endorsement from the Stewart Chamber of Commerce. They have won the endorsement from the firefighters. They won the endorsement from a stepping down incumbent, and they won all and earned the realtors associations, and they earned the endorsements that were necessary to begin to open the doors for the funding from the people that go, okay, you can come in. These people have you've kissed the rings, you can come in. And that's how the Martin County campaigns have run for the past 2.5 to 3 decades. And it was Charlie Kane, by the way, that changed the tide between the Democrats and the Republicans. And he actually brought a strong Republican party in here back in the 80s, but it has since been taken over by, again, these
Well, this is part of the machine we're
country
talking
club
about right now.
Republicans.
I mean, this is these endorsements. That's what
So
brings
this is,
in the-
and where you saw a lot of this tie to Doug Smith and Susan Gibbs was the fact that the firefighters, their union acts as labor for these candidates, and they end up
too.
putting out the signs. So when they're going through and putting out signs for 3 of their endorsed candidates, they're putting down 1 sign, 2 sign, 3 signs. You've been endorsed by all 3. All 3 have been endorsed by them. They're putting all 3 signs out at the same time. So your signs end up close to them. There is a proximal draw, and that is visual, and it's part of the game. It's part of the wave. It's part of the campaign. But I still say that when you look at Susan's policies themselves, she was the one candidate that actually said, look, development is going to occur. And anybody out there that thinks that you're going to have these brakes put on development, you're out of your living tree. Everyone that owns a piece of property has a right to develop it. The only thing that this commission can do is limit or allow for more of that development, or change what you can develop on it. Okay, so I mean,
absolutely.
Susan said, "Look, I want to see not more rooftops. I want to see more business. Let's make our money from business so that we don't have more people, and we can spend our money on the people that are coming from the business rooftop." But do people listen to this? No, because you have such a low voter turnout, and nobody really. They don't really know what the issues are to begin
they didn't.
with.
And I'm going to say the messaging with her campaign wasn't Susan. To me, Susan, I'm not telling you it wasn't your messages. To me, it didn't look like the person I had conversations with.
I'm not sure who
that's-
Susan had working on her campaign.
I don't
with her.
either. I don't either, and I don't know who she may own the
But at a
messaging.
county level,
It mattered. I mean, it's part of it, Eric, was the PACs. I mean, I'm going to go back to that. There was a lot of PAC mailers coming
Yeah.
out. Our mailboxes, folks, I'm sure yours was like mine. Every day there was Green Martin. That's, by the way, a chamber, a local chamber here. Keep Martin green. So the
but
firefighters
they're
have
on
their
a
PACs.
behalf. They're not on an accepted endorsement. They're on a behalf of, without consent. And
But people don't understand that. That's my point.
I know. They
They
don't,
think
and
it's
they're
the candidate's message,
Exactly.
and
That's why they're so
that's what I
effective.
mean. Her
That's why
messaging
they
was
do it.
lost. Blake's wasn't lost. It was Blake's message.
Yeah.
Susan's got it. It's almost like somebody said, "Boy, it feels like it was hijacked." So it was just a race that I followed all these races very closely. Ed Campy, Mike Circus, Bruce Nathan. Bruce Nathan came in and said he wanted to roll the comp plan back to 1990. We're not going to get sued. And by the way, this one really got me. He said that Maggie Herchella doesn't know legalese, the woman that helped craft our entire comp plan. But yet he garnered 6,600 votes even saying these things publicly.
Anybody but the incumbent.
So, well, there was somebody else that wasn't saying, the same message.
Well, and his name was higher on the ballot.
Yes.
And you have a certain just given off the top percentage that goes to the first person state.
You're 100%
And that's where
right.
I mean, God bless Darlene for what she has said about if you're not going to pay attention, don't vote. I completely disagree. I think that you need to wake up people a little bit more. The party needs to wake up, and this is one of the disagreements that I've had with the party and people like that for a very long time. If you're going to serve in that position for the party, then get out there and do what's necessary to kick people in the butt and wake them up.
100%. 27% is terrible. And couple comments here before I make my next one. Tommy Lloyd, Sheen is spot on. What a conflict of interest. Taxpayer-funded organizations shouldn't be allowed to endorse any taxpayer-funded candidates. And I saw another one here. Sydney Thomas had said that Bruce Nathan, as you have said, was second on the ballot, so it just automatically he got more votes just for being in that position.
That was an interesting race right there, too, Miss Sydney
Yes.
and Marcia. Looking at those numbers of turnout and the number of Republicans in her race, there was a major imbalance in that race. And I don't think I brought the numbers with me, unfortunately.
I have it. Sydney had 40.76% to 59.24%, 17,489 to 12,032.
Yeah, I mean, for her, there again, policies and her desire. You know, I actually have strikes against me on Facebook now for posting explicit sexual material that could be considered, I don't know, whatever. It makes it sound like I'm some kind of sex freak because I posted
Books
an
that are allowed.
excerpt from a book that she wants allowed back into the libraries of our young preteen school students. And I violated community standards in Facebook for it, and I'm now tagged as some kind of a sexual pervert with Facebook because I put it
Unbelievable.
out there. And they wouldn't even show me what I had to figure out what it was.
Okay. Yeah, this is what's going on in our schools.
And
I mean,
40+% of the people that turned out, there you go, Republicans, you turned out 64% of the vote, and 40+%, 10% of your people that you turned out, or 12%, voted for that woman. Okay?
that's right.
The numbers
That's right.
tell us that.
Yes.
The numbers tell
Yes.
us that right
Yes.
there.
Yes.
That your party is so effective that you almost had some lunatic back in there again. Let's get with it. It's time for new leadership.
Well, and in almost every case, we have new leadership. Almost every case. The school board, the incumbent did win. I had missed that one with the city and the county, and one county commissioner.
And he does not have a mandate.
And City says, because I'm not part of the machine that you dislike so much, I never wanted specific books back on the shelf. You made that up.
No, it was an author that you said that you liked. And that you want. I've got the videos out there. I mean, stop with the lies. You can't lie. I'm done with the lies, and I'm not tolerating being lied to anymore. Baloney.
So, but this was an amazing election. I was just shocked at the turnout of the people. The 27%.
Yeah.
It really was the people, and I'm not here to bash, and I think anybody knows that about me. I'm not here to bash the incumbents that got voted out. They served, they did their thing, but this is what our process is about. The democratic process. We go out, we vote, we need to change, and boy, the folks really got it this time.
It is
There's
huge.
so many things we need to change, and like you said, the messaging, through as Republicans, the Republican Party, and for me, the PACs. Oh my Lord, the PACs have got to go. I don't know how do we change that, Eric? I mean, this is going to happen with the presidential race, the state level. The PACs can say whatever they want. There's no accountability. People don't even know. As you just said in Susan Gibbs Thomas campaign, she didn't even approve the messaging that was coming out. They just send it up.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we've had PACs that have operated on behalf of the Martin County Republican Party here
Of course.
locally, so that they can get around the rules of the Martin County Republican Party under the auspice of shielding the money for them, so that it doesn't go
Chamber
away.
has PACs. The Republican
Yeah.
Party has PACs. The firefighters have PACs. I mean,
You have to if you're not going to be able to legislatively or lawfully take them away, you have to take their power away, and the way you take their power away is by giving them a bad name. They have to be labeled for what they are, influencers.
I'd like to see legislative reform and just forget about PACs.
Yeah, I'd like to go back to one day a year we vote. Let's have it as a national holiday. You don't have early voting. You don't mail your ballots in unless you're overseas serving in the military. And if you can't get up and you can't go vote, then you know what? There's probably a reason for it, and you shouldn't be voting anyway. I'm sorry. But we've got to get back to this, to a more a realistic approach to the way that we're handling our governance, because it's about to step all over us. If we're, it already is. It's already infringing on every aspect of our life.
There's a chart, if you go to martinvotes.org or .gov, it's our supervisor of elections, but there's a chart about that very thing. The in-person voting on the day of election has steadily gone down over the years.
Yeah.
And the early voting is steadily on the increase.
And what happens in those 3 weeks if something actually, and I've seen it happen before,
Yes.
where you actually have something that breaks, and somebody gets a DUI, somebody it's found out is bankrupt, or somebody, whatever, you get breaking news. They say something stupid that you're like, oh my God, that's really them?
Right.
And
right.
you go, oh, I shouldn't have voted for him. Well, when you look at the returns that come in from this, and the number of people that actually do vote, and you can get this on Vicky's website.
Supervisor of elections. Right?
Yeah, on the supervisor of elections. I'm sorry to say Vicky, because I'm
Right.
used,
That is our
I'm used to being
supervisor.
around the people. But look, here you go. Here's an example. On election day, Doug had 3,724 people, and Eileen had 5,483. Okay, early voting, Doug, 1,100. Early voting for Vargas, 1,900, and then vote by mail, 3,000 for Doug, and 4,700 for Vargas on vote by mail. But those are way, but most of the numbers, like you said, are just
I know it. It's
so
shocking.
far ahead.
They are. Penny, probably totally agree with one-day voting in person and only in person. That's how it used to be. It's this really questions the integrity of our voting system to have so much early voting, to have so much mail-in votes. Who's really filling out those ballots at home? Yeah, the signature has to be similar, but that's it. Where if you come in to vote on the day of, you show your license. Yes, I want you to show ID. A picture ID.
Like to see citizenship. But where's the Democratic Party? Where's the Constitutional Party? Where are the other parties that have the ability to form up here in Martin County and actually put their money where their mouth is and show some actual adult, real opposition? If you play in their playpen for much longer, you're going to end up being one of them. And I think that people, I don't know that they figured it out, but they knew that the incumbents had to go, and it's because this game that they've kept playing has made people feel like they're out here, because the people have never been brought close in. We need an opposition party that's serious.
It is. It's like once elected officials get in there and they're in for a while, they do become part of that machine and part of staff, and they're in that bubble. And all of a sudden, they're in a position where they think, we know what's better because we have more information than you do. Trust us.
Oh, staff said, we have the experts.
Right.
We have all the experts that are trained in sustainable development.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's our 750.
Yeah.
That's
They
our
know.
transit-oriented
you got
development.
that carbon footprint you got to worry about. Keep Marty going. Woo! Keep throwing my money at Marty. Nobody rides the doggone thing. How many hundreds of dollars is it to ride that thing per person? I mean, come
it's
on,
a lot.
guys.
It's a lot. It's Indian River County's a little over $4 per person. Marty's about $35 per person. You could Uber around. We
And
can
the
give Uber
affluence
vouchers.
we have in this county would hopefully equate to intelligence somewhere along the line, but the apathy, well, I got mine, I'm going to put my boat in the slip, and I really don't care as long as, I can get to Costco. Have my
I love Eric
barbecue
Miller.
behind my closed gates. Yeah,
This is
maybe I'll
Eric.
just send Joe to go get it for me.
This
I'll
is
call
Eric.
Uber.
Yes, this is Eric Miller. Eric, this has been a wonderful hour. I know we could talk all day about
I
this.
want my money back.
Eric wants his money back, folks. I don't blame you, Eric. Folks, this was important. Appreciate the 27% of you that came out to vote. This was